Tselane, Executive Chairperson of the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa, joins me now live for more on this story. So, Terry, here's the question. Did the IEC have to reopen the candidate list registration just because it's holding another voter registration weekend?
I think there are two interpretations to the order that came from the Constitutional Court. And the IEC as a structure that has been established to manage the elections, they've made their call. And the interpretation that they came to is that it does allow that. However, I think that it could have helped if they had actually explained their understanding of a provision in that order that says the election timetable, which was published on the 4th of August, remains applicable. If they could just indicate, according to their understanding, aspects that they believe are sacred, that the Constitutional Court decided to preserve in that election timetable, what are those elements that have remained after they've taken that decision? So perhaps that would actually assist. My understanding, as I've indicated previously, that the fact that the Constitutional Court was deliberate on that particular aspect to say the election timetable published on the 4th is applicable, and that notwithstanding the powers that the Commission has in terms of Section 11 of the Municipal Electoral Act, which is basically that of having to amend the election timetable, the Constitutional Court still maintained that that aspect cannot be interfered with, which is that of the issuance of the election timetable on the 4th, and aspects that, in my opinion, would reside within that would include or would be only candidate nomination that remains in that particular provision of the election timetable that the Constitutional Court has confirmed.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason I asked the question is because one of the officials today said that they are just following due process, because if they reopen for voter registration, then they don't see any problem with reopening the candidate list process. You know, as former commissioner of the IEC, is that the case? Are those the rules that allow for them to open up here, or are they just choosing to reopen the candidate registration process?
No. These are governed by different provisions within law. If you look at the Municipal Electoral Act, in fact, the Electoral Act, Section 14, deals with the issues of general registration of voters. Now, the issue of qualification to participate as a candidate in the election is governed by Section 14 for political parties and Section 17 of the Municipal Electoral Act for independent candidates. So that aspect in Section 14 and Section 17 says that a party that intends to participate in the elections must do so by submitting a letter of intention to participate together with a list of its candidates and the deposit thereof. And that they must do this before a particular date that would actually be there in the election timetable. So if in the election timetable that the Electoral Court or the Constitutional Court is referring to, it is an aspect that has been preserved, then it means what would actually govern the process would actually be Section 14 of the Municipal Electoral Act and Section 17, which would actually say that certain things are supposed to have been completed by now, and it is not going to be a general registration that determine candidacy of those who are contesting the elections.
Yeah. Okay, so there's been lots of allegations from some political parties that the IEC is favoring the ANC because it reopened the candidate list registration process. Is there any sort of influence that can be made on the IEC from any political party, given that you were in that position of commissioner?
Well, I think the Commission itself is the one that has got to be able to respond to those kind of allegations. I think they've got a responsibility and a duty to allay fears, particularly to the electorate, because the Electoral Commission is a very important institution in our society. And then if there are any allegations, they should be the ones who are actually rebuffing whatever allegations are being leveled at them by respective political parties.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm asking if they are open to any influence, given that they are governed by, obviously, regulations. So is there any possibility of any influence on the IEC from a political party? And I ask you because you were the former commissioner, and the IEC's already rubbished this. They say it's not true, but is there any way they can be influenced? Because that's the question South Africans are asking tonight. How do we lose Terry at such an important question? All right, we have to leave it right there. But Terry, can you hear me?
20 years that I was interference in the...
Oh, okay, great. Okay, so let me re-ask the question, right? I said I know that you obviously cannot answer for the IEC right now, but given that you were former commissioner, is there any way that the IEC is open to influence by any political party?
For the entire period of almost 20 years that I was part of the Electoral Commission, there has never been any interference in the processes of the Commission. And therefore, I would want to believe that it is not happening even now. But as I've said, the commissioners are themselves, better placed to deal with the current developments within the organization. I'm reluctant to speak on their behalf and pretend to be their spokesperson when they've got the competent spokesperson who can speak on their behalf.
And some would argue otherwise. All right, so let me ask you this then. The Constitutional Court gave 2 orders, right, for the IEC. They could have chosen whether or not they were able to have another voter registration weekend or not, so there were alternatives. The route that they took, do you think it's the right one?
Absolutely. You may recall that even during their submission to the Constitutional Court, not only the Electoral Commission, but all the political parties lamented the fact that voters were not going to be given an opportunity to register to participate in these elections. And the fact that the Constitutional Court was able to find a facility that enables voter registration, I think it's a wonderful thing for the voter, particularly because in order for the Constitutional Court to be able to come to that conclusion, they had to declare the proclamation by the minister to be invalid and unconstitutional. If they had not done so, there was going to be a problem about the fact that the declaration or the proclamation of the date of the elections, in fact, closes the voters' roll. So there was not going to be an opportunity for voters to be able to register.
And the move to reopen the candidate registration process, was that the right decision, in your opinion?
I have already indicated that that was the call for the IEC. They made that call. I've got a different interpretation, and that interpretation, as I've said, is centered around the provision in that order that says the election timetable issued on the 4th of August remains applicable, and that even though the Commission has got the powers in terms of Section 11 of the Municipal Electoral Act, that power is limited or constrained by the fact that whatever the Commission does is subject to the election timetable that was issued on the 4th of August. So it is within that we've got to try to find those aspects that would make the Constitutional Court come to the conclusion that the election timetable issued on the 4th of August is sacred. What is sacred about it? As I have already indicated, I believe it is because candidate nomination process was already concluded and it was lawful, and therefore that provision was meant to basically safeguard and preserve the sanctity of that particular process.
All right. Thank you so much for your time and your insights. Do appreciate it. That is Terry Tselane, Executive Chairperson of the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa.